Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the 5 o'clock business meeting of the IID. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Mr. Simon, would you lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Taylor, are there any actions taken in closed session to report?
Yes, ma'am. The board took action to extend the term of the Chief Internal Auditor's employment contract, which expires by its terms on September 21, 2011. The contract was extended to December 30th, 2011, after which time the Chief Internal Auditor intends to retire.
Okay. Thank you. May I have approval of the agenda? Are there any items to be pulled from the agenda or taken out of order?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. This is the time for public comment. Please come up to the podium, state your name for the record, and please limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Tony Ramos. I'm an Centro resident. And I haven't been coming here lately because I've been giving a heck to the Board of Supervisors for the last year and a half, I guess. They don't want me there, but that's okay because freedom of speech is guaranteed by the
We
First
want you here.
Oh, well, I know. But freedom of speech is guaranteed by the First Amendment, and I feel that as elected officials, they have to take the ribbing and any other critique that I may bestow on them, if you want to use that word. But in any case, I just want to show you something before I start to say something about what happens here. This is a sign I made, and it says, California Personnel Employee Relation Board confirms Crozet violate labor laws. IB Press July 8th of this year. And all this is, ladies and gentlemen, is that it says that your local department, probation department, the labor laws there were violated by 4 acts of this guy Crozet, Martin Crozet. And this is very serious because it's going to go to court, but the board that I go to seems like it's nothing, it's just a formality. It isn't a formality. And what I don't want is for me to bring a sign like this here, accusing the board or even the manager of doing the same thing. That's why people like us trust and hope that the board works together, because once the board's not working together, it affects how we voted for you. Even Mr. Desert, and I told Mr. Sanchez today, I didn't vote for you, but I got nothing against you, Nothing at all. I don't talk mean about you. I never have. I never will. I support certain other people at the board, but that's okay. And yet, ladies, I've gotten letters, mean letters, to my address, talking about my mother, my children, my wife, that we look a certain way, and almost saying that they wished we weren't here. It was short of a threat. Otherwise, the police or the FBI could have done something about it. But if I can't take it, then I shouldn't be here. The same thing with you guys. If you guys can't take criticism, you shouldn't be there, because Thomas Jefferson said that once you become an elected, you become public property, and that's true in a way, because you have to leave your phones on if people want to get a hold of you late at night. You have to stop at Vons or whatever when people want to talk to you, because they recognize you. And all I'm saying is that as an elected official, you have to take the good with the bad, You have to take criticism. If not, let's tell her she's been here at least 8 years or more, and man, she hasn't taken credit. Sometimes I'm sitting there, sat there, and I say, how dare they talk about my little sister that way? I call her my little sister, but she's not, but we are like brothers and sisters. And then, you know what I say? Well, my little sister decided to take that seat, and she's taken on the shin many times, but you know what? She pushes back too. And I remember her saying that when we first got the water transfer, that San Diego Water Authority, if they push, we're going to push back. And that's what it's all about, is defending our water rights, because who in their right mind that lives in there wants to give away or sell their water? Otherwise, we're going to be like Owens Valley. And I ask you, Mr. Manville, who I'm going to help again this coming election, I think it's 8 years now, John, JP? 8 years, 2 terms, you've served 2 terms already?
Yeah, no, I'm running again, but the election's not till June 4th of 2012.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's the next election. It's coming up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And all I'm saying, we'll be...
Director Mendoza and I are we're the targets.
For next year, right?
You're a target, I'm not.
Yeah.
That's because you're a woman.
Yeah.
No, it's not because I'm a woman. I'm just not the target.
But in any case, all I'm saying is that, JP, I remember when we first started with your election, we started like from scratch, you know. You weren't well known other than the fact that you were Menville and a farmer, but people didn't know or elected you. But you got elected, and here we are 8 years later, and hopefully you'll get another term. But it's all about representing the people, not working against each other, not giving Kevin, not that he can't defend himself either, pressure. Let Kevin do what he has, and let the council help him, and you guys decide. But ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, it's on your hands. Whatever you decide, it's on your hands. And it's better to have a board that works together than a board that works against each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos. Anyone else would like to come and speak at this time? If not, I will now go to comments from board members. Director Hanks?
No comment.
Director Menville?
Yes, thank you, President Mendoza. Yesterday, I attended a Green Employers Council meeting at San Diego Gas and Electric, and General Manager Kevin Kelly was a guest speaker, and he spoke to the group on the resource adequacy and explained to them what the IID has to deal with in resource adequacy. And I thought that was a very good meeting, and he did a very good job. Also, what I would like to have brought to this board someday in the future, next 30 or 60 days, is our computer security system. Mr. Kelly, I know that we have a lot of issues, nothing to do with what's going on with, so to speak, Spygate, but just the security system that our computer has and the hacking and the things that we have to deal with, because I know that with Homeland Security and everything, so I would like to see sometime when you have time to bring that to the board to show what we go through from a security standpoint to protect the IID. So I think that I would be interested in that, and I think it would be good for us. Then I'd like to make some board member comments dealing with some statements that I made last week. Last week at the board members' comments, I spoke of this board bringing in Charles T. DeMyers to help assist our legal team in working to get a better QSA for the Imperial Valley. I want to be clear, as an elected director and trustee of the Imperial Irrigation District, I have a fiduciary responsibility to the public that I serve to help get a better QSA for the Imperial Valley. I realize these issues we are dealing with on the QSA are difficult. Mr. DeMars is a New Mexico water attorney who filed an amicus brief in February 2011 dealing with a QSA. Mr. DeMars, in filing the amicus brief, was representing the Citizens for Reliable Water Supply, CRWS, a cross-section of interest and citizens of the Imperial Valley, who too are looking for a better QSA for the Imperial Valley. I've done some research on the issue of Charles T. DeMyers having a conflict, an issue that has been raised by IID lawyers handling the QSA cases. Our lawyers say Mr. DeMyers currently represents parties, CRWS, adverse to the IID in the QSA cases. I do not believe that Mr. DeMyers has a problem with his former clients, CRWS, allowing him to assist the IID legal team with a fresh set of eyes and working directly with this IID board to help make a better QSA for the Imperial Valley. I feel there is no conflict in using Mr. DeMyers. This QSA issue is too big to turn on personalities, and this board should look to Mr. DeMyers to help improve the present invalidated QSA. This board, working with Mr. DeMyers and our legal team on a new Plan B QSA, should turn on the best policy judgments of what is best for the Imperial Valley. I do not propose for Mr. DeMyers to undercut our existing QSA council. I just want Mr. DeMyers working with this board to provide us with new ideas that may be useful in a new and improved QSA, one that does benefit our area, not the water-thirsty agencies on the coastal plain. If Mr. DeMyers, in working with this board and our legal team, cannot help to improve the present direction of the invalidated QSA, then the current IID legal team can continue on the same path they have followed for the last 8 years since QSA was signed in October 2003. Either way, what's important for this board is to try and get the best possible deal we can for the people of the Imperial Valley. The conflicts can be worked out, but we cannot wait any longer. Bringing in Mr. DeMars to work directly with this board needs to happen now. I'm asking my fellow board members that we all work together for the survival of the Imperial Valley. What I wanted to do, and I know I've spoken to Gloria Rivera yesterday, I'd like this to be put on the information agenda for the 26th, dealing with us bringing in Mr. DeMars, and I'd like it to be put on the action agenda for August the 9th to take action on Mr. DeMars. And so that's my board member comments at this time.
Director Desert, comments?
Yeah, first of all, there's an open house next Thursday evening for the Valley Center office, which is an outreach part of the Imperial County Transit Commission. That's going to happen next Thursday at their new facilities here on Imperial Avenue. In regards to the issues on the QSA, it's always ongoing and it's always interesting if you're following along and paying attention. Unfortunately, a lot of the community out there and the ratepayers and voters lose sight of what's happening. I'm also interested in a fresh look, being prepared for the future as things appear to be unraveling with the QSA. I just need to do that on a very sturdy basis, and that needs to be done through the hands of our general manager, Kevin Kelly. Thank you.
Director Sanchez.
No comment.
I have a few comments. I visited the command post in Calexico on July 16 and had the opportunity to observe the IID and the IRB work crews replacing down power poles and restringing lines from the localized weather event that occurred a couple of weeks ago. It was a hot day, and I was greatly impressed with the professionalism of our people in the field. Despite the heat and the hard work, they worked as a team and they got the job done. I have always believed these people who represent the front line of our interface with the public represent the best of the best, and they proved it again this past Saturday. From the occurrence of weather events like this, the IID's determined response to it, that I take considerable satisfaction in the decision to keep, this was written, but I'm gonna ad-lib, because I can't, never mind. It was, after visiting the folks in Calexico, as they were repairing the lines and working with their equipment, they needed to go and refuel their trucks and have their access equipment, and they were able to do that. They were able to refuel at the Western Division, which at one time was proposed to be shut down by a previous water manager. And I would like to commend Director Menville, who worked with me in convincing the water manager not to shut it down. And time has proven it was the right thing to do for the districts and its ratepayers. And I would hope that the Western Division remains open and remains fully staffed, because it plays a very important part of the service we provide to the ratepayers in the South End. If it hadn't been for that division being open, our guys would have to come all the way to Imperial headquarters to gas up and go back, and lots of precious time would have been lost. So anyway, Mr. Kevin Kelly, keep that in mind, please, as you go through the budget. And I also wish to commend the outstanding contribution of the Emergency Services section. Mr. Hatfield, you're up in the audience, in establishing a command post, helping to keep our crews safe for the duration of the post-event repair work, and making this situation an orderly and manageable one. If you hadn't worked out in the middle of the heat, in the middle of the day when it's like 110, 112 degrees, and you have our employees working with their full gear, their hard hats, their gloves, and yet they do their work. They don't complain. They do their work to the best of their ability. To me, it was very gratifying to see Mr. Hatfield and his crew provide some respite, some rest for these guys to come and sit under a tent, get to eat and get to rest, drink the Gatorade, kind of re-energize their body and their soul, so to speak, because then from that they went back and they continued doing their work for the rest of the day. So I learned from Mr. Hatfield that this command section was only established a few years ago, and it was a very good idea to do that. And again, Mr. Kelly, I hope that we continue with this section, because it plays a valuable part in maintaining the health and safety of our employees in a situation like this. Finally, on behalf of the district, I want to encourage all you folks to join us Friday in the Casa de Mañana building at the fairgrounds to help us celebrate our centennial celebration. The event begins at 6 o'clock. It's from 6 to 9. Please bring your family, invite your neighbors. After all, this is your party, because you're part and you're the owners of the IID. So please join us in the celebration. Director...
I make a comment about...
You already had your comment, period.
But it's a plus comment. I want to say that when I worked with Director Mendoza and Mr. Ross to not close the Western Division, the reason they didn't close it is because she was a woman and she was very adamant about not closing it. And Mr. Ross said that he wasn't going to die on that hill.
The fact that I can't change the fact that I'm a woman, but it's...
I'm giving you a bad time,
No,
Sally. Come on.
just...
Lighten up.
At times I'm a better man than you are, a bigger man
not
too.
arguing that.
Mr. Kelly, any comments?
No, only that we intend to bring back the email and computer system safety regimen that Director Menville called for.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Mr. Taylor?
I have no comments.
Moving on to consent, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda or any items to be pulled or anything?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Moving on to item number 3, page 66 on your agenda, request for community involvement funding, and that's Director Sanchez.
Yeah, hi. The IID ordinarily funds a lot of organizations throughout Imperial County, and a couple of these have been in the Imperial Valley for quite some time now, and I think they deservingly as well should receive some funds for their good works. I guess the first one will be Bobby Brock from the Imperial Valley Community Foundation. I know they've been here for a while. He's going to introduce some of the things that they do, and they do a lot of big ticket items that I think, and while the IID funds a lot of organizations, this particular organization does a lot of big ticket items that benefit certain communities and throughout Imperial County.
Thank you, Director Sanchez and President Mendoza, board and esteemed executives with IID and guests here in attendance. My name is Bobby Brock. I'm the President and CEO for the Imperial Valley Community Foundation. And certainly, first and foremost, want to thank you for the opportunity to come and the invitation to present a little bit of information about the Imperial Valley Community Foundation, and certainly appreciate the consideration for support. The Imperial Valley Community Foundation has been around since the mid to late 1980s. I was still in school at the time, so I don't know the exact date. I apologize, but up until about 2007, it had been a community fund to really benefit Imperial Valley programs and nonprofits, led by locals here in the community. Some of the founding members included Phil Hill, Joe and Clyde Shields, Dennis Kern, Norm Lassie, Tom DeBose, Sue Giller, and some other notables that have certainly set a firm foundation and opportunity for us to really facilitate philanthropy here in Imperial Valley. And so what the Community Foundation does in a nutshell, because I know you have a full agenda, I saw we were on page 66 and you have probably double that to go, is the foundation's here to do charitable wealth management. So we assist individuals, families, other nonprofits, agencies, public agencies, businesses in terms of establishing their own charitable fund to accept gifts of stock, real estate, or else develop grant-making plans or scholarships. Some of the funds we've most recently been involved in creating had a deal in stemming from the disaster this past Easter in 2010, which in response to that, we set up a regional disaster fund to help displaced seniors in Calexico as well as mobile residents here in El Centro, and awarded about $50,000 in grants for those emergency and survival needs. In addition to that, we've also established a youth grants program in partnership with the James Irvine Foundation. And Irvine's invested about $300,000 just in hard costs, as well as about $100,000 in consulting and board development to help the infrastructure of the foundation. And those programs were to benefit youth-serving nonprofits that work with youth between the ages of 14 and 22. And so those are just a few examples of things that we've done, as well as here just in recent months. We've set up the Sharon Kern Foundation, which is to benefit women's programs and through PEO, as well as culinary arts education in memory of late Sharon Kern, wife of Dennis Kern, former CEO for Valley Independent Bank, which is now Rabobank. I apologize that my board chair and vice chair, Tim Kelly, is the vice chair, and Dave Takata with Rabobank couldn't be here tonight to speak, but they extend their appreciation and regards as well. We've also been working with the local banks and credit unions that have deposits here in Imperial Valley, namely Rabobank, Desert Commercial Bank, Community Valley Bank, First Imperial Credit Union, Sun Community Federal Credit Union, Community Valley Bank, I think I mentioned, I don't want to forget them, as well as Union Bank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, Chase, and I believe Golden One Credit Union to set up a financial institutions fund. And this will be a collective advice fund. We talk about creating these partnerships to greater impact community needs. And so they've worked to develop an education initiative. And we also manage a fund for the Imperial County Office of Education Foundation, as well as some others that benefit the hospitals here in El Centro and Brawley, as well as over to support the museum across from IVC. So what we do is, again, develop community partnerships, as well as facilitate people's interest in the community to help preserve their passions. And so as part of that, we're also establishing community endowments. And these are community funds that are going to be led by and supported by community members to make sure that there's always a source of funding to help fill that gap to meet local needs. And so that's one of the things that we're venturing off on right now, as well as supporting other scholarship funds like the Mary Harmon Scholarship Fund to benefit 4-H clubs here in Imperial Valley, as well as other groups and service clubs that are emerging or want to establish a fund and are in organizations such as the Midwinter Fair Heritage Foundation that is being organized, as well as the Rainforest Art Projects that you see maybe throughout Imperial and El Centro. And I know that they're also venturing off into Brawley. So again, there's a lot that we have going on. We're very proud about what we're doing, excited about the good work. And again, we appreciate the consideration. I'll be happy to provide any additional information that the district has before your next meeting. So I guess that's what I understood, was to share a couple minutes.
That was more than a couple of minutes. But
I misunderstood then.
but thank you. Mr. Kelly, have we donated to these organizations before?
I don't recall the Imperial Valley Community Foundation coming up before. I am familiar with the group.
No, ma'am.
I know we donated to Imperial Valley College Foundation. Haven't we done that? No? Or the...
I think in the past that we have.
I kind of vaguely remember
IVC
doing
Foundation. Do you recall? Yes.
Yeah, I thought we had. Yeah. Okay, Director Sanchez, anything else?
Are we going to do these both together, or?
Okay, no,
Well, this is information.
Right, yes, and yes, ma'am. Actually, I don't represent the Imperial Valley College Foundation. Todd Evangelist is here on behalf of the IVC Foundation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Todd, you're up.
President Mendoza and Board of Directors and guests. My name is Todd Evangelist, and I'm the Director of the Imperial Valley College Foundation. I'll keep it real brief.
Please.
IVC many know about us, and there's some great facts about us. We'd love you to go to our website to get the full story. But in a quick nutshell, enrollment for the upcoming fall is going to be just under 9,000 people, students, and it's a critical role that we serve in Imperial County, with 17% of Imperial County having received less than an AA degree or higher. The foundation was established in 1964, and last couple of years our focus has been raising funds with the foundation. We primarily do that with scholarships and then long-term capital projects. And one of our programs that we're excited about is our Student Ambassador Program. And Ivan Moore is here. And Ivan, I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm just going to introduce you, one of our outstanding student leaders on campus, in a new program that we established called our Student Ambassador Program. So we developed that program a couple years ago because we thought they would be the best people to tell the story of IVC. So we certainly appreciate the district's consideration for support of our college foundation, and you have contributed to the foundation in years past.
Yes, and I know we have.
And it's much appreciated.
If it's the consensus of this board, do you want to bring it back for action at the next meeting, the 26th?
Sure.
That's the consensus?
Yeah.
Yes,
I-
yes.
I have a comment.
Sure.
to make. On the use of our community involvement funding, there are several items, particularly in a small rural area like we have, where it's difficult for one organization just to head it up and fund it and so forth. So we set up a community involvement funding, and if you took every one of our customers, it equates to about $1 a year per customer. And the request today that we're asking for is roughly 7 cents per individual of our accounts. So what I'm saying, it gives us an opportunity to pool our money, to do some good things for our community, and the IID is nothing more than a tool to do that. It's the ratepayers themselves that's donating this money, but as an organization and as a tool, we can make it happen for our community.
It's appreciated.
Okay, so I guess, Mr. Kelly, the direction is to bring it back for action on the 26th?
Certainly.
$5,000 to each one.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 4, page 67 on your agenda, Water Department General Matters. Mr. Villalon.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have one item. Late yesterday afternoon, we met with a representative from Union Pacific Railroad. They have plans to expand to a second line on their existing rail line across the valley. It's going to impact 16 lateral and drain crossings. They may have been first in time in the right-of-way, so looks like we may be having to fund those 16 crossings. Preliminary estimates that are around a little under $2 million, so we're going to have to really work with them to help us extend this implementation of the second line. Additionally, they generally have plans to install second set of rails within the valley anywhere where they only have one set of rails. So in the future, we and immediately with this particular project, we will be working with legal and real estate to make sure that we do establish who has first-in-time rights, because that then sets who pays and who is the beneficiary of any upgrades to crossings. It'll be a really tough situation for our capital budget in coming years because it'll hit us in 2012.
How
Director Manville.
are we affected on the All-American Canal crossing? Because I know the rail was there before the All-American, and when we had to replace the bridge, it was $3 million.
It was on our nickel.
So what, if they put a second rail in, do they need an extra bridge crossing there on the All-American?
Whatever it takes. There will be a bridge across East Highline, for instance, but within their right-of-way, so we advance for there too. We have that responsibility, look like, but we will be investigating these particular crossings individually.
Mr. Kelly or Mr. Taylor? Any?
Yes, essentially what Mr. Villalon explained is correct. It's going to depend on first in time, first in right. Was the railroad there first or was the IID first? And I think in this instance, it looks like the railroad was probably there, but we're certainly going to do the due diligence and check all of the documents and make sure that that is the case. But we're just, our meeting yesterday was kind of to discuss some of those issues, and that was one of the issues that was discussed.
And this is Southern Pacific Railroad?
It's UPR.
Union
Pacific. You know, they have way more means of building those crossings, and they have way more money than we do. Make them pay.
There's no question that the railroad was here first. IID actually was formed by a vote, ironically, that we celebrate
The 22nd.
100 years later.
Yeah.
And that vote authorized the people of the district to pay the Southern Pacific Railroad for the stock of the California Development Company. But never let it be said, Mr. Villalone, that you failed to deliver news during the water department manager's
Yeah, this was the meeting we
period.
held with railroad people, 5:30 p.m.
Yeah.
late yesterday.
Well, better late
Just
than
found
never.
out. Yeah.
I got one more question.
Yeah.
Carlos, did you say that there's a crossing on the High Line and the All-American, so there's two crossings?
Not on the All-American. At this time, they're only going to be working through the first 15, 20 miles that cuts northwest of the valley or northeast of the valley around the Island area. But they do have plans to expand lines later on.
Mr. Taylor, the district, could we have like a hardship case that we can't build these, we can't pay $2 million out of the water department?
Well, I think...
Can we make a case?
I kind of tend to doubt that. I think that what we probably have more success doing is maybe pushing the expenses back to a budgeted year so that we have time to prepare. And that was one of the things that was discussed yesterday is, you know, perhaps we could push this out to 2012 so that we could get it budgeted. And I don't know that we really got an answer from the railroad, but they seemed like they were considering that. But we've, you know, there are many instances, in fact, most instances where we are there first in other areas. So this rule sometimes has a negative effect as to IID, but sometimes it works out well for us. It just happens to be one of those times where we're probably going to have to pay.
Have you done research where other communities where they have to improve the rail system, whether the utility company or the governmental agency, whether they had to pay or the railroad paid? Can you research that?
Absolutely, certainly, I'd be happy to look at that.
Yeah. Okay. Directors.
Surely we
Hanks.
can find some flat-tailed lizards or artifacts out there, can't we?
I go plant some.
You know, it's kind of ironic that's first in time, first in line and everything. Why can't we get people to accept that on our water rights? You know?
We can work on it.
Okay. Any other great news, Mr. Villalon?
That's all I have.
Next time, I'm not going to call on you. I'm just going to wait till the end. Okay. Moving on to item number 5, page 68 on your agenda. Update on All-American Canal Siphon Project. Who is the presenter? Mr. Gomez?
Good afternoon, members of the board, Madam President. We are here to provide an update on the All-American Canal Siphon Project. And we have that presentation right there. So what you see there on the first slide is the location and all the different parts of this project. What you have there in yellow is actually shows north is up. So you can see the work that is already completed, which is the south embankment. We're gonna go over different ones, but this is the south embankment work. And then we have the north embankment, which is in progress. We have also work that was done in between the two inlet structures of this of the siphon and also of the wasteway, which is we'll call it bull nose ceiling because of the way it looks. We also have 2 vertical drains. They have to be installed, one on each side of the culvert that is part of the inlet of the wasteway. And as part of the work, we have the stabilization of the wasteway structure, which is, also includes, actually as part of it, but it's the grouting of the wasteway, which is to prevent or to take care of voids that were found underneath the wasteway structure. We also have to pipeline a section of the drain that is located on the west side. We call it drain number 9, which is one of the drains that help to maintain the underground water away from the existing canal on the north side of the new river. What you see in blue here is the work that is in progress. I was there this morning, and part of the piles that should be helping the wasteway structure stay in place and without any kind of lateral movement were installed. All this are installed, and the ones, actually all of them are installed. Just a part of the structure, the concrete structure that is going to be connecting the piles to the wasteway out in progress right now. The embankment on the north side, just half of it's completed. And just moving to the next one, what you see in red is the work that is completed. Again, is the south embankment is completely done. The sealing of the bullnose was also, it's complete, and the grouting of the wasteway was also done. What we have here is a kind of a list of all the different parts of the project and indicating status on them. Like, for instance, the pier nose crack repair was already completed. The wasteway chute stabilization bracing, that is in progress, about 72%. We have the wasteway chute grout injection that was completed. This one was done first in order to continue with this work. The wasteway culvert construction joint repair, this is gonna, it's already designed, it's gonna be done a little bit later after we complete this part of the work, which is the bracing. Support embankment inlet, this one, it's what we showed, the east side is done. And we're going to continue doing the west side after the wasteway stabilization is done, which is this part right here. The inlet, again, is partially done. The support embankment outlet, which is on the north-south side, that is completed already. We call vertical drains, but are called, fill seepage upper embankment. Those are almost completed. Actually, part of the embankment is completed. The wasteway concrete flume, this one is what is called the drain on the west side, and that is going to be completed later after the work on the wasteway stabilization is done. This one is a sluway. People refer to that to be the bowl because the concrete lining done, I guess, containment that is located underneath both of the siphons, and that is to assist the cleaning of the siphons when they have to be emptied or something. That the water goes into that, and then it drains into the new river. And these other items are in the schedule, but they are only if they are required, which we don't think we're going to need any extension with FEMA anyway, but it still is in the schedule.
Excuse me, come again?
Yes.
About the billing and administrative closure, you said you're not going to get an extension?
What we're saying is if everything goes as the way it goes, we're going to be done, as I indicated 2 months ago, we're going to be done before actually the deadline of November 4th. Everything is moving really, really
September?
good. We are actually shooting for the first week of October. I think that's what it is.
First week of October?
Mm-hmm.
And the and all the paperwork, all the communications with the bureau and all that are going on there to your satisfaction?
That's right. We are actually having weekly meetings, and we're kind of considering. We have a weekly meeting with other parties like the Bureau of Reclamation and some other members of the group of the team, and then also having internal meetings right after that to address those issues. But yes, we are moving forward with it, and up to now, talked to our group this morning, and I think we are a little higher than this because these numbers reflect what we have done up to last Wednesday, actually. So tomorrow we're going to have, updated numbers.
So
anyway.
who's taking the lead, the IID or the Bureau?
The IID.
I have your word on that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Actually, this morning I was going to wear a tie just to as it was recommended, but I went to the site a couple times today, so I was so hot, with the temperature that I want to breathe a little bit. So I said, I'm going to leave my tie in the car.
You would be recommended if you did wear a tie, so I'm glad you didn't. Yeah.
See? Anyway, they were asking me about that, but anyway. But yes, we are moving forward. We are working together on this, and it seems like everything is going how it's supposed to be.
And your communications with other agencies and all that, they're going on, and everything is to your satisfaction.
That's right.
Okay. Comments or questions from the board, Director Hanks?
Yeah. This time of year is not unusual. I have some pretty good rainstorms.
Mm-hmm.
The type of work that you're doing, does that create any dangers for us there? Or?
I don't think so. As a matter of fact, last Thursday when the first storm hit the valley, I think part of our group were called in because there was runoff actually went on the side, which is the west side drain, drain number 9. We have currently a bypass right there in order to be able to work around the wasteway, and there was a little issue right there, but it was addressed right away, so we took care of that. But I don't think it's going to create a problem with that. That's why we are kind of being really careful.
The last couple of storms then didn't really do any damage.
No, with the exception of that one, the Thursday, we have actually what happened, it was not even the water, it was trash that came in and blocked one of our bypasses, so we have to kind of repair that section right there. But everything is back to, it was actually back to work the next day. Is that correct, Francisco?
Any other comments? No. Thank you for the report, and you'll come back and give us another report.
That's right.
What?
In about 2 months.
2 months?
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Moving on to item number 6, page 76, an update on the All-American Canal Buoy Line Project. Who is Mr. Curtis? You're the presenter.
Good afternoon, President Mendoza and fellow directors. And I just have a little bit of information here on the buoy project. You have a handout in front of you, and let me see if I can get this thing to work here. There we go. Okay. All the buoys were installed and they were completed in July of this year, and there's the quantities of there's 105 lines and a little over 1,300 warning signs that were installed, and it covers the entire 82 miles of the canal. Water engineering, they did all the design work and wrote the specifications. And water construction and energy crews did the installation. Also, I'd like to thank the purchasing section, shipping and receiving. They found all the materials and got them shipped here in on time and made the arrangements to have them delivered. And the total cost is 1.1 million and some change.
And that came from the water department?
Yes, ma'am. All the money was paid by the water department. And this is a breakdown by section, the cost. It's kind of hard to read, but if you have the handout, you can see it. And the reason, if your attention will probably be brought to section 4 and 5. The buoys were installed every half mile. And that's the concrete line section, and that's why that cost was a little higher than the rest of them. We've encountered a few problems. There's trash and weeds and the algae that grows in the canal. They start to collect on the buoys, mostly just during this past high flow period from March through, we're still encountering a little bit of it, but from March, April, and May is the worst time of the year for us for that, on that canal. Road maintenance is a little trickier now because of the signs where they're located. We have to be a little careful about grading out there and watering. Oh, and there was a couple of the strobe lights on the ladders on the concrete line section. They were missing, and some of the signs are starting to disappear in the Calexico area. So, and these are just some photos here. It shows the buoys during the high flow period, you can see the amount of tension that's on those lines and the debris that collects on them. And also there's one on the bottom right corner there that failed. There was so much material on it, it snapped the line. So the crews, they made that repair. And that's it.
Since the buoys were installed, do you have a count of how many lives have saved? Have there been any drownings in the canal? Are there any accounting, Mr. Kelly?
Yes, there have been. I was speaking with Mr. Villalone about this yesterday. Can you address that?
Yeah, I believe there was a body found at New River Check Siphon a couple of months ago. I'm not sure if Securities and Claims is here. Another one found upstream of Drop 4.
Were they close to the buoys?
In another earth section. And then a more recent one in the upper reach of the lines area.
So we had 3 drownings in spite of the buoys.
Those have been reported in the All-American Canal. Yeah.
President Mendoza, as you know, there's no way really to account for anyone that was saved because of the buoys. We only know about
the ones that were drowned, didn't make it.
Right, but they have been a mixed bag as far as the vegetation and the upkeep and the velocity in some sections of the All-American Canal is such that we've actually had some failures but you get right back up there and put them right back in. So.
Okay. Comments or questions from this board?
How many drownings did we have a year before?
I don't have exact numbers, but they were usually in the tens.
We were averaging about 1 a month, Director Hanks.
And now?
So there has been a big improvement.
There has been a reduction, at least in 2011.
So for the year of 2011, there's been 3 drownings?
I think that's about right. I recall one in the line section within the last month.
Okay. Comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Curtis.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 7, page 84 on your agenda, Energy Department General Matters. Dr. Koch. Dr. Koch?
Yes, Madam President. Just one thing. As a result of the windstorms last week, we now have the P line back in service as of Monday. We're working on the last of the lighting fixtures, getting them up. We did get a little bit of equipment from APS under our joint emergency agreement. This is very small, just 5 cutouts and 5 arresters. And we believe that we're going to have the distribution circuits all completed by this evening. And our estimate is that the damage will come in about $2 to $3 million. That's going to take several weeks for us to put together.
And do you anticipate being reimbursed 100%?
I don't know if it would be 100%, ma'am. We're going to make sure that we have all costs accounted for and then apply for everything that we can get.
And again, all communication is open between the recovery team that's working on the cost and the energy department and so forth and other.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Questions or comments from the board? Thank you. Moving on to item number 8, page 85 on your agenda, Imperial Valley Distribution Projects Major Work Authorization. Mr. Escalera.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Mr. Kelly, if I may add just a little bit, on your question on the storm damage, President Mendoza. We're now, of course, in the document stage. We've been working very closely with the EMS groups. And we've actually had a number of meetings with them to make sure that the way we're documenting our work and our purchasing, acquiring of materials is in a format that we need to submit for reimbursement. In other words, there's some areas where it's more beneficial to use a contractor instead of our internal resources for full reimbursement. So we've kind of worked with them, and they've been very helpful in that part of the documentation.
That's why I emphasize communication is very important, because if you do that and there's communication going back and forth freely, then hopefully we'll get reimbursed to the top and not the lower end of the schedule.
I know that the days that I've been out there, I've stopped by and checked with them to see what we could do for my office, and I know that our superintendents on the field are meeting with them at least 3 or 4 times a day, because we have a superintendent on site 24/7. So I'm very confident, and so is Dr. Koch, that we've got all the communication lines open, and I think it'll be demonstrated once we submit all our paperwork for reimbursement.
Submitting the paperwork is one thing, getting reimbursed is another thing.
Well, one step at a time, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Again, I don't know if Dr. Koch, but we estimate that by the end of the week we'll have finished both all installations and cleanup with the project. And it's certainly no small feat by our crews out in the field. If I may now, what you have before us is a request for a distribution project, approximately 1,800 feet of existing single line 12 kV distribution in the city of El Centro. The location of the project is being between just west of 8th Street, north of Highway 8, between Sandalwood Drive and Windwood Drive. What we're proposed to do is replace that solid copper, number 6 copper, with 1/0 ACRS cable, which would bring our distribution circuit up to our standards and meet GEO 95 standards. The project is estimated to cost approximately, apologize, I've lost my place.
It's okay, it happens to me all the time.
The project is estimated to cost $792,000, $437. This is budgeted under a 2011 budget, capital budget. It is done for reliability reasons, as we stated before. It's to bring our circuits up to our new standards that have been established about 18 years ago. The infrastructure, the assets that are replacing are well over 40 years old. They've served us well, but they do just show their age every time we have a storm or a wind. The project is ranked number 7 on our library. As you can see, these are a project library that we work off of. The first 6 projects, 4 of them had been completed in 2010. The other 2 projects had already been approved by the board, and we're getting ready to start construction on those 2 projects. This is just a pictorial view of some of the facilities that we propose to change out. As you can see, the wiring is quite a mess. Once we go through there, it's much cleaner. There is no access, of course, in some of these older
They
neighborhoods.
don't have an alley?
Believe it or not, El Centro and Calexico tend not to have alleys. We've been very fortunate in Brawley. Most of the facilities have alleys, and it actually allows us to do more for with the money that we allocated. We've been trying to kind of evenly address all the cities. As you know, the first 2 we brought to the board was one in Calexico, one in Brawley. Even though they range all about the same amount of dollars, the footage in Brawley is considerably more because we have access. With that is my presentation.
Any questions or comments from board members? If not, you'll bring this back on July 26th
Yes, ma'am.
for action. Thank you. Oh, yeah. I'm getting there. I lose my place as well. Item number 9, page 108, amendment number 1 to service agreement, Elms Equipment Rental. Mr. Escalera.
Madam President, thank you. What you have before the board, what we'd like to move forward is amendment number 1 to our pole disposal service agreement. The original agreement is a 3-year agreement. We're in the final 1-year agreement. We had anticipated the removal of about 3,000 poles to take us about 3 years. We've been extremely successful in our pole replacement program. In addition, we've taken on what traditionally was handled by stores. We now have included all in the same service agreement. So even though we've removed the tonnage that we had anticipated we would do in 3 years, we've basically done it in a year. And what we are proposing, we'd like to ask the board is to not to increase the service agreement by $233,000 to facilitate the last 2 years of the service agreement under the same agreements that we have. This was competitively bid a year ago. Elms have performed exemplary. In fact, they're one of the few contractors after the service agreement was done and we accepted their pricing, they actually came back and adjusted their price down because they found that the fees at the dump were less than what they thought they were, and they actually gave us credit for that at the very beginning of a contract, which is not typical.
Some of the poles that were damaged by the storm, are they going to be recycled through this agreement?
Well, this agreement doesn't. Unfortunately, this agreement was already in the mill before we had the poles. We're actually trying to get an emergency service agreement to address that. That's about $20,000 to $30,000 more. We estimate about, I think it was a little over 1,000 tons, if I may, I could be off, of additional that were not contemplated in this service agreement. We had, to be honest, we had 2 choices: pull this one out and include those, but we were afraid that it would kind of mess up the timing on this one. So we're taking another avenue, and we'll address those in a different service
So
agreement.
you'll bring those back. You'll bring that back to the board.
I don't believe, we'll have to check that with Ms. Dre, but I'm not sure how we're going to do that on that particular one. I think we're trying to figure out that we're trying to wrap it within the documentation of the project so that we ensure that we get full reimbursement for those pole replacements and not kind of get it lost and muddle it with some of our typical or what our normal operations is. So to give you the long answer, I'm not really sure how we're quite going to do that.
Okay.
Got a question?
Question, Director?
Mr. Escalera, we're going to amend this service agreement and increase it. It says in the second sentence in that bottom paragraph that 75% of the cost is funded from the 2011 pole replacement program. Will that 75% still be covered with the part that we amend as we move forward?
Well, we also fund the pole replacement program for 2012 and 2013. What we're trying to demonstrate there to the board, Director Desert, is the percentages of funding. It's anticipated for 2011 that would be the funding split. In 2012, we also anticipate that 75% of those funding for this service agreement will be under the pole replacement budget.
Okay, so the expansion of the agreement, the increase will be covered 75%.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
It's always nice to see service agreements being brought forward for approval.
Well, and I do want to commend
It's a treat.
Our Angie Ambrose, which is our planning manager, and then also we actually do have money left in it, but we want to be able to bring in before. No, we have money left, and that's one group that we haven't really given accolades to on this project. If I may, President Mendoza, as Dr. Koch mentioned, at the end of all of the material that we had to replace, we had everything we needed. Our planning unit, with the help of purchasing and stores, was able to procure all of the equipment and all of the material, other than just 5 arresters and 5 cutouts, which is very minimal when you take into the complexity of all that went into this project. So I wanted to at least make sure that the board took notice that they also were part of the team that's so far has done an outstanding job.
Well, that's great.
you.
Appreciate their hard work and their dedication. And so this will come back on the 26th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, you're gone now, huh? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't go too far. Item number 10, page 110 in your agenda. Amendment number 2 to service agreement for Power Tech Engineering. Mr. Ivy? He left? Did he go back to New Mexico?
Scared him.
I'll move to the next item.
Mr. Escalera, you just do the presentation. Come on.
They will get it.
Mr. Escalera, you do it.
I'm just going to read what's here.
I apologize, Madam President. He was here, so I don't know if he.
You don't know the setup when you see one?
No, sir. This is for Power Tech Engineering to continue doing OAT studies as part of our cluster study. We have certain studies that are going to continue going forward, and then we're going to start a whole new cluster beginning roughly September 1st. Power Tech has done a decent job for us in the past, and we'd like to amend the contract for an additional $250,000.
Questions or comments from this board? It'll come back for
Action.
approval, for action on the 26th?
Yes, ma'am. And
Thank you.
Mr. Ivy will be here for that.
Okay, you can sit down now. Thank you, Dr. Koch. Well, make sure he's here for the 26th.
I've got a question for
Yeah.
Dr. Cole.
Oh, Dr. Koch, come back.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Now, it's my understanding that all these costs will be paid out of the fees that were charged.
That's
for
correct, sir.
The interconnection, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Are there any items or benefits that we might be challenged on from these expenditure? Is there a clear separation of record keeping, or?
We are attempting to account for individual time, with the exception of my time. There is some, and the district has to account for something. But for example, Ms. Asbury's time, Mr. Ivy's time, each of the projects, those all get assigned and charged against. All work that we can identify specifically to a project gets accounted to that particular project. But my time does not, or any general overhead time.
Okay. I'll probably have a couple more questions, but I'll catch up with you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bring this back on the 26th for action. Thank you. Moving on now, we'll move on to item number 11, page 115 on your agenda. Ms. Gray, you're there?
Yep, good
Okay.
afternoon. With the passing of Policy 1525, which is the disposition of salvaged tangible personal property at the end of May, we wanted to bring back to you information about the process of how the surplus is identified and disposed of. So if we go into it, oh, that's me. Forgot. Thought we had somebody running that. Basically, the process goes in 4 steps. It's the identification of the materials. It gets turned into the store's superintendent for tracking and holding it throughout the process. And then the disposition of materials, after the materials are identified as to what their approximate value may be, we decide upon the best way in which to sell them. And then the 4th element is the reporting of the disposition, how we sold them. Okay. So again, the receipt of the materials, the department really has to identify the materials as surplus to that department. They have a form to fill out to identify the material. The manager and supervisor sign off that the material are surplus, and then it's turned into the stores. The material is assigned a tracking number, and then there's an investigation that is done to determine the approximate salvage value. So they'll do comparisons through different auction sites, eBay, to get an idea of what the value may be on that item. The items that are estimated to be worth $100 or less are listed on a listing and approved by the general manager, and then they are sold. The items that are estimated at greater than $100 are again approved by the GM and then brought to the board to declare as salvage for sale in a resolution. And one of the agenda items for today is the first resolution for that. The stores actually has a number of methods to take the disposal of the surplus. In many cases, items get turned in that go for reassignment. A lot of furniture, if it comes in, we are real good at repurposing and finding a new home for it that maybe is an upgrade for one section, and they can utilize that. So some gets reassigned. Some is in a bad condition and has to be destroyed. And that's a business decision as far as whether it's going to bring any profit or it should be disposed of. We do have a number of contracts for disposal. When we have tires that are returned, batteries, vehicle batteries, substation batteries, we generate a lot of metal surplus, things that are taken down from the field, short ends of wire. We have contracts that went out on solicitation for the disposal of those items. We also handle IID auctions for our vehicles. I think probably all of you have attended at one time or another for our vehicle auctions. We will also be going into third-party auctions. We have a number of non-compliant diesel engine vehicles that need to be sold. They can't be sold in the state of California. So we've been investigating and have found a number of sources to try with selling those vehicles. We also have identified several companies who handle third-party auction. So there's one company in particular called Interscola, which deals primarily with governmental agencies, schools, cities, to dispose of the surplus property. So they take all of your regulations and policies into account, and they provide the documentation for the sale of those things, and it's usually through an eBay-like site. We also have provided IID online solicitations for the sale of specific items where we feel we can identify a target purchasing group. We participate in sealed bids and then any other interests or methods that would be in the best interest of the district. We also will be advertising when we send things out on these third-party auctions so that the public will be able to participate and take advantage and put in a bid just like anyone else so that we can get rid of our surplus materials. And so we will be doing that rather soon, as soon as we start getting some of the resolutions passed. We have a backlog of things that are stocked up that we need to get sold. All of this information is tracked during the life of the surplus material. At the end of this, stores actually takes care of tracking all of the surplus goods from the minute that they get it until the final disposition.
When they do that, is it entered like in SAP, or how do they?
At this point, because this has all come about rather quick, there is nothing that's in SAP at this point. We would have to talk to someone in IT to see if there's...
Generated by paper records, that's going to be very...
By Excel.
Excel?
Mm-hmm, by spreadsheets. We'll have to talk to someone in IT to see if there is an area within SAP that could house that. But at this point, to get it up and running, we need to be able to take immediate action. Quarterly reports will be brought to the general manager and the board as per policy, and it will identify the method of disposal, the disposal value, and the date of the disposal. And so the last slide actually is just a reiteration of the 4 processes. You see 3 major columns and then the quarterly report that goes into the 4th column. The receipt of the materials from the department normally goes to the sale of the materials. But the last column down below, which is the row leading across, if the department identifies that something is going to be used as a credit or trade-in, the additional authorization has to come through the CFO to authorize or to approve that they can utilize this, and that would have to go to the board as a resolution as well. There will be upcoming meter exchange, and we anticipate that we may have to use, if there is any value of the meters, to offset the cost of taking, the tabulation of all of the meters and the cost of destruction and so on. So there may be a recommendation that comes to you that would be signed off by the CFO that would encourage that we would use a credit or trade-in. Occasionally, something like that may also happen maybe in a vehicle purchase, but we don't know at this point. But normally it comes into stores, they give it a tracking number, they store it, make sure it's safe, they establish a value, they obtain the appropriate signatures based upon the value of the item, and then determine the best means for disposal.
Okay.
That's it. If you have any questions?
Questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Going on to item number 12, page 123 on your agenda, approval of geothermal production tax credit extension resolution. Ms. Goodsell, I think Director Hanks, you were the one that brought this forward, but upon your request.
Yes, as your board memo states, staff was directed at the last board meeting to go back and prepare a resolution for you to consider adopting today in support of extending the Treasury's 1603 cash grant in lieu of production or investment tax credit programs for a period of 10 years. We did work with Energy Source and Cal Energy on the resolution, and unfortunately Mark Graham had to leave to go to another meeting, and Larry Grogan is not in the Valley today, but they both are in favor of the wording in front of you.
We have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Please vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 13, page 125 on your agenda, internal auditing section. Presenters, Ms. Betty Villaverano and Craig. Is Craig here? Yeah. Page 125. The actual report starts on page 126.
Yes, good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board. The first report is our SAP system upgrade. The IT department's SAP system upgrade is accounted for in 2 major work authorizations. We reported on the first one, the server upgrade on June 7, and this report covers the SAP system upgrade from version 4.4C to ERP6. Before I go into really talking about the findings in the report, I would like to make a general comment that in every report we issue has the general manager and the respective department manager as the responsible party. However, there are many components in the MWA and capital projects which involves processes owned by other departments than the one being audited. In this report, our observation number 2 refers to the finance department and the decision made by the CFO at that time. And observation number 3, when we're going to get there, you'll see is the service agreement process, and it's owned by the administrative services. Therefore, our recommendations and consequent implementation requires an interdepartmental collaboration because of that when times comes for the recommendation follow-up report that we make usually 2 or 3 times a year about to the board, we will list all departments as responsible parties. And so in this case, as you see in our report, we have Mr. Campbell as Chief Administrative Officer and Dane Vaughn as Chief Information Officer. Probably we're going to add another one when it comes for update of the implementation of the recommendations, the Finance Department, the CFO probably. I mentioned the MWA. The board took action on May 26, 2009. The project was not to exceed $5,475,289. External consulting services, contingency, cost not to exceed $3.9 million, and were budgeted in the centralized services 2009-2010 capital budget. The internal labor cost, estimated at $1.5 million, will settle to the respective department resources cost center. The scope of the SAP system upgrade includes the entire SAP system landscape, hardware and software, and all other support systems as required for continuation of business operations without loss of functionality or performance. The proposed project start date was July 2009 with a completion date of March 2010. Our observation number one, we checked the status and the actual cost recorded in the SAP system. The project still is open despite the March 2010 completion date, and total cost to date is recorded at $3,174,000. And we have a breakdown of the cost on Appendix A, which is page number 129 in the board package. Our observation number two is about the statement in the MWA that refers to the $1.5 million for internal labor cost. According to the PMO's project manager, the CFO decided not to charge internal labor against the project, and as a result, there is no cost tracking. However, the CFO did sign off on the MWA before it was presented to the board for approval, and we question why not made that decision before bringing it to the board and not include that line item. Now we have a MWA, which includes a $1.5 million, but a decision made later, well, not to track. So if somebody would look at the project just really quickly, said it was a $5 million project, and it stands completed at $3 million, so it's $1.5 million less. It's not the case.
For the record, the CFO who made that decision is no longer with the district. Mr.
Thank
Broking, is he here? Okay, it wasn't you.
He's smiling.
Oh, he knows how to smile?
Our observation number three refers to the service agreement. We checked the 5 service agreements used for this project, and four of those appear to follow all existing policy and did not exceed the approved amount. However, we made the following observation on service agreement 81780. That is for software licenses. It was opened in December 2006 for a not to exceed cost of $561,000. Amendment number 1 was done on September 2007 for additional $24,000, bringing the new total value to $586,402. There is a written note on the service agreement, SA closed, with an illegible signature and no date. According to responsible personnel in purchasing section, yes, the service agreement was closed and reopened, and amendment number 2 dated May 4, 2010 for additional $82,195 for a new total value of $668,000. However, since inception to date, the total value of the service agreement as shown in the SAP system is $713,185, and we have Appendix C on page 130 of your board agenda, and we can see that the service agreement actually is over with about 14%. And ever since the service agreement was open, every single time, the committed value was more than the approved value, as you can see. Between $3,000, actually more, $30,000 up to about $100. Nevertheless, the service agreement is over. So when I made a statement at the beginning that other departments we would like to have involved and will be involved in responding to implementing the recommendation made by us, that's what I was referring to. As a response to our service agreement findings, Mr. Dane Vaughn, the CIO, has had a suggestion to take advantage of the SAP system existing capabilities, and we are welcoming, and also we inserted here is Mr. Vaughn's response to this and proposed solution, and the benefits. He describes the existing process to be processed, and the benefits, which is the entire acquisition to payment process, can be entirely paperless, including transmission to the vendor and workflow enabled supporting and strategic objective number 1.
When does he plan to do this, to incorporate this?
Performance to budget is visible through standard reporting. Contract agreements can be created in reference to the other contracts, purchasing requisition, or RFQs, or quotation. One of the benefits that Mr. Vaughn says here to answer to your questions, Madam President, at the very last bullet point says, requires minimal configuration.
What does that mean?
Minimal configuration, Mr. Vaughn is not here to answer that question.
He's in the back of the room.
Oh, he's here. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. So what minimal configuration means?
Come to the mic, please. State your name for the record.
Good evening. I'm Dane Vaughn, Chief Information Officer. This is kind of an outline of what would be required to implement the new functionality. I haven't really scoped out what it would take in terms of hours, but it's a modest type project, minimal configuration. I would estimate it to be several person months rather than person years of effort. So
when are you going to start?
We can start anytime. I mean, I think that there's opportunity to improve the entire process. I think around utilizing contract agreements and release orders, and kind of re-engineering the way we do our service agreements right now, and offering some new capabilities, leveraging our existing system. It's hard for me to respond exactly when we should start, how we should start, because it involves a lot of, really sponsorship out of the business is probably the right place to initiate this type of thing. Out of contracts, I would say.
So who would take the lead in this?
Well,
in this
Madam President, it's a proposal, and it's a response to our audit findings. First and foremost, what needs to happen is to have a process. Standard operating procedure for service agreements. We talked on almost every report we gave to the board and involved service agreement, we find some kind of interpretation, if you would say, of what the policy says or what the process is. During our field work, we talk to responsible personnel, and we encounter some kind of dissatisfaction with either timeline or just what it needs to be done. So I think first thing first is for the senior management and the general manager to decide, a standard operating procedure for service agreements, new and amendments. And from there on, I think also, like Mr. Dane Vaughn stated, it's trying to implement something and automate it as much as possible in SAP system. We can take advantage of the SAP as much as possible. And one of the benefits that we can see some of the internal controls that we talk about it, and work that we're doing probably can be incorporated right there. So there are benefits. Now, can we jump and start tomorrow? Probably not. It needs some planning, needs some budgeting, but I believe it would be a good thing for us to maybe embark on next year, if it's not budgeted this year. I mean, I don't know what kind of projects IT has for this year. So.
And this system could be used like in the water department, the energy department, because
yes.
Once you set the pattern, you know, I'm not an IT person like you, and I don't know the lingo, but once you set the pattern or you set the SOP or whatever, it could be utilized by, say, folks in the water department working on a drain or energy, whatever, like shredding the telephone, the power poles. It would be very easy for our folks to access this, right?
Would be probably the only way to do it. That's absolutely everybody across the IID, regardless of department or section or whatever work is done. It's a service agreement. It's a service agreement, and everybody will do it, use the same system, and will do it the same way.
So, Mr. Vaughn, what do you need to get this going?
You know, one suggestion first to your question, I would advocate for a standard process to be utilized across the district, whether it be water, energy, or central services, for us to, you know, as I said earlier, to leverage the system and some of the capabilities. In terms of starting, one recommendation I could throw out there is for us to build a working prototype of this capability in the next several, you know, weeks or a month or two maybe, just to kind of illustrate the type of capability we're talking about, and then formalize it into a project. And so we...
Sounds good to me. Mr. Kelly, would you be amenable to something like that?
Yes.
Okay, well, come back and report in a couple of months, see what you got. Show me what you got. Okay. Director Hanks?
The standard operating procedure seems to be a familiar word.
Comes up very often.
Yeah, didn't we work on that for about 2 years and still waiting?
Policy. And Director Hanks, one of the things that I think it's staff, and I'm not... It's a confusion between, not confusion, it should be clear. A standard operating procedure is built that it shows almost step by step how something is done. And it's based on a policy and following that policy. So now we have a policy. Next step is to do our standard operating procedure. And Mr. Campbell is looking at me. Would you like to add something?
Just as you know, and you've been included in the process, that we are expecting a final report soon from National Government Institute of Procurement, who we've engaged with to help us put those documents together. So we did receive some information 2 weeks ago, Donna, and so we've been reviewing that. And we've been working with the internal audit team to make sure that, because this has been an item that shows up in different audit reports beyond just the audits regarding the procurement process itself. So it is a broader issue, and we want to make sure that we get this thing right, which is why we brought in National Government Institute of Procurement to help us facilitate.
So what time frame are you looking at?
I would expect we should be able to bring something back by the end of next month.
Next month, and then?
In the process, the recommended by Mr. Bond, you know, this issue of a service agreement being signed close, and I'm glad you brought up about ineligible, legible,
non-legible signature,
because there's many documents that come through here. I have no idea who signed them. You know, so I would like for us to develop some type of form where at least there's a typewritten name underneath so we can figure out who it is. But then the other question is, once a service agreement is closed, should the processing of any claims against it, should it not be blocked?
Well, The purchasing agent has the right. I mean, just because service agreement was closed because somebody requested, it wasn't the purchasing agent who closed the service agreement because wanted to close. So, in this particular instance, this service agreement is for licenses. So, my understanding was maybe it was closed in haste. And when they need to, and it is with SAP America, it's the only one place you can buy, I mean, you can purchase these licenses. So we recognize that in this case, service agreement was closed and it had to be open so they can buy the licenses. And I believe it was specifically for e-recruitment, which was part of the SAP upgrade, and it was brought to the board. And so they needed to buy the licenses. So not the issue is that the way we see it is the decision to close a service agreement is going to be part of the standard operating procedure as well. So, and if they need to be reopened, what kind of documentation or approval will need to reopen it? That's the issue. That's as we see it.
Just, if you think about it, it opens up all kinds of cans of worms. Record keeping, is it opened up after the fact, after the reports are given, and maybe after the board looks at it, and okay, we have a service agreement, everything is within range, within realm. And then all of a sudden, the service agreement is opened back up, so it makes you wonder,
Yeah, if you have a report where it said you have so many service agreements open and so many closed, if one gets reopened, then that statement is
so,
not right. Yes.
And then who has the authority to close the service agreement? I mean, that needs to be part of the process. Once it's closed, it's closed.
Well, the issue of closing the service agreements, that comes from the department manager in this case. That was my recommendation based on an issue that had come before the board before, that there's an awful lot of open service agreements that don't seem to be in use anymore. So I sent out a directive to all my groups saying, if a service agreement's been open for more than 3 years, it needs to be closed. Unfortunately, as Betty has identified, part of the problem that's identified in here is we have a one-size-fits-all mentality with a lot of things, including service agreements and contracts, that, again, the only mechanism for having licenses with SAP in our world is through a contract. The reality of it is an agreement with SAP really a contract requirement and managed through the contract process? And that's what Betty's been helping us with, and Dane's suggesting that there needs to be a better method for how we engage certain things, because again, one size doesn't fit all. Having a contract and a service agreement for licenses on a system that we have no other alternatives is probably not the best mechanism to manage the device with.
Did this have multiple call centers, this project?
No, it should only have gone through IT.
And the really issue is, like Mr. Campbell said, Director Hanks, is that we have the same type of the same mechanism. It doesn't matter what it is, we purchase licenses in this instance, and you purchase only from one place. So, or if we purchase hardware, or if you purchase, we make contracts for office or field work, service agreement with Granite, or service agreement with power engineers that just talked about it earlier, which has nothing to do with construction, or sometimes, when we lease equipment. So the type of service agreements that we have only one, and we use it for everything. And this one size fits all, it's just not a good practice. And that's what we've been talking about, that that's what we need to change. Because in this case, licensing, it should be some kind of contract. Of course, you go for approval depending on how much it costs and all that. But is it really a service agreement? And we have everything under service agreement. So hopefully with this, and that's when our recommendation is, if you see recommendation number 3, is that what it refers to address, consider addressing the process from requisitioning to settlement of the service agreements in the new procurement manual that is presently being developed, and that's what Mr. Campbell talked about it earlier.
So for purposes of record keeping and counting and auditing and so forth, SAP is very capable to perform this service. And when you're talking about requires minimal configuration, then you're talking about modifications that might just be need to modify some of specific items related to IID. Is that what you meant by minimal configuration?
So basically, in the way SAP is organized, is you can customize the behavior of the software by doing configuration rather than doing customized programming. So in other words, there's a generic contract agreement in there that we could then flip some flags in the configuration to make it behave the way that the contracts group would want the contract agreement to work, and for subsequent release orders against that to operate.
So if there was a variance from the process, it would flag.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Donna, I think.
Just wanted to make a comment. This particular service agreement with SAP America is a very unique document. And back when we did the initial configuration and negotiated contract with them, SAP America was the entity that refused to accept any other contract with us. And at the time when that was closed, and then they needed to go through with subsequent upgrades, SAP would not deal with any new contract or negotiation of terms. So from the initial negotiation of terms, they were the ones that were insistent if we did business with them, it would be against that contract. So, and that's not normal practice. That's a special thing with a big entity.
So this is an isolated case, you're saying?
I'm not saying that a contract that's been closed has never been opened, but in this manner, this is the only one that I'm aware of. You get into a position sometimes in a contract where what is better if you have a stranded cost, do you open up a closed contract and acknowledge it against that contract, or do you open up a new one, which to me looks more like you would be trying to hide it under a different contract. So there may be a few cases of that nature, but this particular one is a very unique contract.
So, Betty, you want to continue?
Well, actually, I think I concluded my report, and Ms. Donna Gray was very gracious and come up and give us the explanation. I wish she would have given it to us through Mr. Campbell when we have the 10-day draft, and everybody has a chance to comment on it, and that's okay. And we always, doesn't matter how much we try to standardize things, we always gotta have exceptions, and this was an exception.
You know, and that's what when I talk about communicating, internal auditing section can help all of us do a better job. And when they request information, you guys talk to them, give them the information they need, because it'll make your job and my job easier. And you know, just it's not like it's my department. I'm not gonna give you information that you need or whatever. We're one big happy family here, and we need to talk to one another. So in the future, this information that should have been relayed to the auditing section should have been relayed to them.
Well, and there's no hard feeling in that, Madam President.
Well,
I'm sorry. And Mr. Campbell and I actually have had a couple of meetings, and we usually hatch out a lot of things. And this one, I think it just fell through the cracks as far as he's concerned, and maybe as far as I'm concerned as well. So.
I just hope
but thank you very much for the support.
Well, I just hope better communication in the future, and then so hopefully, Mr. Vaughn, when can we see this in practice? You talking about 6 months, 8 months, a year,
Maybe a year.
a year and a half?
2 months.
Well, I think, first of all, I don't want to speak for the business because they really need to drive it.
Yeah,
I'd be
Mr.
here
Kelly,
to.
you can speak for the business.
I have every confidence Mr. Vaughn can do this in a couple of months.
Okay.
We'll make every effort to bring it back to you.
And please,
Yeah, I thought I heard him say 2 months a while ago.
I think that what I would suggest, and I haven't had a chance to talk with Donna, but what I would recommend is that we do get just a working prototype up and running, and I think that's feasible to do that
In 2
in
months?
a couple months, and then use that as a springboard to understand the process, the capabilities that we have available to us, and then merge that with the requirements from the business, and then maybe come back to you and give you a more definitive answer as to when we would have the actual solution implemented.
Okay,
Would be
Ms.
my-
Rivera, for the first meeting in October, can you put him on the agenda for an update? Put that on your agenda.
I got a
Thank you,
comment.
Mr. Vaughn.
I got a comment.
Director Desmond.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate what Director Hanks stated about having the names, printed name on there where the signature goes. Not just in this area, but on the MWAs everywhere, because there's just so many signatures, and we don't know who they are. We don't recognize them, and the department head status doesn't or their position doesn't really cut it. We need to know what the name is if we're going to truly follow this and be consistent in all these policies.
Yeah, so.
I would just
is
like to
there-
add one thing. In the future, these individuals need to go to their department managers and explain, like you said, President Mendoza, what their issues are, so that all of that can be incorporated instead of us lining up behind the podium, because in the future, it's not going to happen. This is an agreed upon report, period. So, I'd just like to express that concern, and I support you 100% on that.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, and as far as the information not getting back to the internal auditors, staff and management, you've got to understand that the board members hear all this, and then we get caught up in it, and who's trying to understand what's going on. And is their internal auditor's position and authority, and they have all the position and authority that the board gives them to function in this way, and it's up to you to give them that information as soon as they request it. Don't fight them anymore, please.
Okay, is there a motion to accept the report?
To approve, move to accept.
Is there a second?
I'll second with, and like to make a comment. This was excellent work. It wasn't. I'm sure it wasn't an easy task. And a lot of work went into this, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good work.
Thank you.
Please vote. So from this day forward, we're one big happy family. Agreed? Okay. Moving on to number 13, Greg. Rose drain outlet pump. Oh, maybe not a happy family, not with this one. Let's see.
Good evening. I have a report to present on the Rose drain outlet pump modification project. This was one of 5 mitigation projects for the Caltrans 111 construction projects, which go back to 2002. This is the largest of those 5. First of all, the amount budgeted for this project was about $1.7 million, according to SAP and to other documents, cost estimates that Water Department supplied to me. And ultimately, what was spent was about $2.4 million. At the time we wrote this report, the last invoice sent to Caltrans was outstanding. It has since been collected. The entire amount spent on the project, $2.4 million and change, has in fact been paid by Caltrans. Of course, that amount is subject to audit by Caltrans should they decide to exercise that option. So I will say again, the project has been completely reimbursed by Caltrans, and all of the payments were received, quarterly payments were received within 60 days, except for one that went somewhat longer but was nevertheless collected. Of the amount spent, $2.4 million, that's a 39% overrun. And I don't have anything really concrete on what caused that. I have a few ideas, but 39%, it had to do with specialized construction skills that were needed, that the two main contractors, Granite and Radco, were able to provide, but IID employees were not. I've heard various...
Who made that decision that internal force could not do some of this work?
Those responsible for the project, people in the water department. The specific person, I don't know. So going on, we found as we were looking at the reimbursements received from Caltrans that there's no written process in place at the time, and we recommended that a written process be put in place, a sort of SOP. We gave some ideas, and the water department has agreed to put those in place. There were a total of 19 different service agreements associated with this project. We chose to examine the two largest among them. One was for Granite and one was for Radco. They had other service agreements also, those two contractors, but we looked at their two largest, which were the largest of the project, looking at all service agreements. What we saw that there was a $200,000 service agreement at the start of the project for Granite, and they got to work, and they were in the field working before the service agreement was executed. In fact, before there was any evidence, anything provided for insurance coverage, they were in the field working. And of course, they weren't paid until there was a service agreement in place, but they were willing to wait because they knew the district was a good credit risk. So they were working without any evidence of insurance coverage and going along, and finally the district paid them, but they needed another $200,000 so they could keep working, Granite, and that they got through an amendment to that service agreement by this board. Radco had a similar situation, but their contract was $185,000 and change. They were in the field months before there was any any service agreement executed. They didn't need any kind of an amendment, but nevertheless, they were in the field working. Is there any questions there?
Questions or comments from this board?
We believe then that we have 4 recommendations. First of all, this is a project that was, of course, planned for greater than $200,000, about $1.7 million plus, and it went more than that ultimately. And there was no MWA. We believe there should have been an MWA presented to this board for its consideration and possible approval in accordance with Policy 1080. And we hope that going forward, that's what happens. The second recommendation, document the utility agreement invoice process in writing, and I spoke briefly upon that. We gave them 7 steps. That's on your page 133. 7 steps, 7 suggestions to get them started. It's not all inclusive, but it's a good place to start. Number 3, prepare an amendment in order to document and justify all changes to approved cost estimates. Actually, the cost estimate that was put together by the Water Department was for $1,735,600. Ultimately, the amount that was put in the SAP plan column was $1,791,500, $55,900 more, and that amount remains unexplained. And lastly, our 4th recommendation, do not allow contractors to commence work without an executed service agreement.
I have a question.
Yes.
From Mr. Villalon. On page 133, those 7 recommendations, will that be incorporated into?
We are working with PM office to rectify all this, definitely.
Mr. Vaughn, would a project like this, would this fall into what we're talking about, using SAP to track something like this? Is this something that could be?
I'm not familiar with this particular issue, but essentially any MWA could utilize the process that I suggested.
And your process would eliminate contractors working without an executed service agreement? Would that put out a red flag?
I'm not so sure that it's only going to be as good as the process is managed. So,
in other words, if it's not noticed that the work has started, how would the system flag it? I mean, the operator of that system would have no knowledge of it.
I think contracts and the PMO.
Phil, do you want to come forward?
Actually, I am looking at this issue right now, and I can tell you right now that there should be, project management should be watching this process and making sure that we're outside the bounds of that authorization, and there will be accountability inside the project management office. It's not just a process where one group's wrong or the other group's wrong. It's a process where both of them are wrong, and there should be oversight to that process from the project management office, and there will be.
Yeah. This is very sloppy work. It's unacceptable.
So let me say that with this project, there was no problem with disclosure. We had full disclosure from the Water Department, full cooperation. They gave us lots of documents, every document that we requested. I have a response from Carlos Villalone, and it addresses various items in the report. Some of them have been acted on already. Some of them, he stated, will be acted on. The facts are undisputed, and they've accepted all recommendations.
Is this the exception to the rule, or is this the norm? Do you know?
I've usually had pretty good response from most people I've worked with, but some people decide that they're too busy to work with us. But they did very well in the response to me. I commend them on that.
President Mendoza, correct me if I'm wrong, but that wasn't your question.
No, that was not my question.
You were asking,
I didn't know how to politely ask it again.
You were asking whether or not projects like this
are the bookkeeping, the accounting, is this the norm, or is this the exception to the rule?
That probably is one that Craig would be reluctant to.
The bookkeeping, the accounting, we looked at numerous charges to this project, bills paid, invoices paid, recorded in SAP. They were all valid. There was nothing there that was unaccounted for. That's the usual case. Sometimes reporting is not what it should be, but you can always work on that. You can always improve reporting.
You know, I can understand when we have a project and time is of the essence and you need to get the work done in time, especially when you're working for the state, and I can understand that. But you folks have to understand that we have to follow the rules. And that's the reason why we have service agreements. That's why they have to come before the board. And I don't want to subject the district to liabilities if we don't follow the procedure. It's really important to do that. And I think this is a learning experience for you all and for the board as well. And I can appreciate you're out there, you're working, you want to get it done. And that's why I say we have the best of the best. But you know, there's perimeters where we have to work within to make sure we're all covered.
Yes, and of course that was our recommendation number 4. Do not allow contractors to commence work without an executed service agreement.
Yeah. Okay, may I have a motion to accept?
I move to accept.
Second? Discussion, Director Hess?
Yeah, I'd like to give a report from the dark side. I said, I want to give a report on this from the dark side. I've heard all the comments and everything, and I want to share my feeling on it.
Yeah.
Okay? As far as I'm concerned, every aspect of processes that this board expects, it appears to me, was violated in this project. There's failure of multiple agencies to implement controls, and a lot of it's because some of those that are responsible for processing some of the paperwork or paying the bills or whatever don't know what's going on out in the field. It's not reported. There's silos everywhere doing their work, getting the job done and getting it done on time, but yet the reporting is not shared and it's not following through. So therefore, any issues of no MWA, overruns, amendments, whatever, there was no notice. We have some reporting guidelines with dotted lines completely to the board. So if for some reason there's collusion or whatever going on, those that are going to be held responsible have the opportunity to come and report it. And it wasn't reported. And Director Mendoza asked the question, I think what she was saying when she said, is this the norm or something? I want to know, are there other projects out there? Is there more of them? And if there's more of them, it's not the exception.
That's what I was trying to get to.
So if it is, it needs to be taken care of. And, you know, we talk about time of the essence and so forth. A lot of time, that's an enabler to skip some of the planning or get lax and so forth. And as far as personnel, that's outside our realm. Okay. But I think our general manager knows that we expect him to look at this, see what needs to be done, and if it's just a lack of process is one thing. If it's a challenge to the system or the failure to commit to the processes, then again we expect the general manager to do something. I'll leave it there.
Mr. Kelly, you're
Yeah, just in response, I think the most egregious thing about this project, perhaps not sinister, but certainly egregious, is the failure to commit all of this work to an MWA and bring it to the board. To your question about how rare is this occurrence, the exception from this point on will be the project that doesn't have an MWA. And if there isn't an MWA, there'll be a damn good reason for it, and we'll present that to you.
very good. That's what I wanted to hear. Director Desert?
Yeah, Director Hanks mentioned the personnel here, and personnel are outside the area of interaction with the board, and they should be. But it doesn't mean that the board doesn't hear about personnel, or the board doesn't talk about personnel. We may be talking about you more than you talk about us. In this internal struggle, as we try to find things out that are going on at the IID, especially in this area, there seems to be a struggle between engineering, construction, and PMO. And that needs to stop. You need to hear the message loud and clear today that it needs to stop. We need to have reporting. It needs to come back to the board. There's a dotted line back to the general manager that wasn't followed for this general manager. Perhaps the other general manager knew about it, but someone forgot to give our new general manager the heads up as to about what's going on out on the Rose Pump. So now we come find about it today. So I just ask you to all work together. We've made some changes at PMO, and let's get this put together right and move forward in the future.
Okay, please vote. We're going to vote. Director Sanchez, vote. You did? Okay, cool. All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 14, page 139 on your agenda. Resolution authorizing designee for Bureau Reclamation grant. Mr. Bradshaw, you're the presenter.
President Mendoza, the directors, and as Bobby Brock said, the IID executives. Thanks for having me. We have applied for 3 grants this year, and the first one was able to be awarded for almost $80,000. This is from the Bureau of Reclamation, and they have the paperwork prepared, and we've also included the actual agreement for you to look at. But this is to help us buy some monitoring equipment to measure our spills and to get a better idea of how much water flow we have. And the matching, they do allow through in-kind. So we're able to match with our own budgeted labor. So it doesn't
So
cost
no-
us any additional money.
Great. May I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Discussion, please vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Why can't they all be just like that? That'd be so great.
Because you didn't give us a chance to discuss it.
It's free money, take it. Number 15 on your page 183 on your agenda. Ms. Gray, you're back. This is the resolution.
Yeah, those are the items that are listed that we have in that are estimated over $100 per unit.
I move to adopt the resolution. Grant authorization to dispose of the declared surplus property.
Is there a second to your motion?
Second.
Okay, I have a question. What's, in the water department, you have 5 of these top contractor Jack Crane control system? What are those in there, what,
They're
36?
some of the laser leveling devices that they had. I'm not
Are they
quite
being
sure how
replaced
they're
with
used
new
in
ones,
water
or-
department. They're already antiquated for the purposes of the water department, therefore
So they're being replaced by newer
and
ones?
some are missing parts and some are damaged.
Okay. Right, any other questions? Please vote. Okay. See, that wasn't so hard, was it?
Madam President, if I may.
Well, who's talking to me?
Over here. For this meeting, we did include an information item to talk about the process and disposal, and we also put that on as a resolution. But we'd like permission in the future that we just have those as consent items,
Yeah.
and then that way the board can just,
Yeah, we can
if there's
pull them if
issues,
we
obviously we
wanted
can
to.
just pull them.
That's
But
fine.
this time we wanted to get the process out there and get the resolution and establish that as a priority.
That's fine, thank you. Moving on to item number 16, page 186 on your agenda. Energy Department refunding revenue bonds 2011C. Mr. Broken?
Yes, this is the third and final series of financing the El Centro Unit 3 repowering project. It's for action tonight. I won't read all the documents that we're going to ask for approval, but as in previous meetings.
We have a gentleman that needs to.
Yes, Don
read
Hunt,
it.
who's with Fulbright and Jaworski, our outside bond counsel.
forward,
has a
please, and-
statement he would like to read.
President
Statement into
Mendoza,
the record.
as Mr. Hunt approaches the dais, I'd like to invite the board to recite with me in unison.
We know it by heart. Go.
Good evening, Madam President. Backed by popular demand, I'd like to read the statement for the administrative record with respect to the authorization of the documents for the bond issue. The documents presented to you for approval authorize the issuance of not to exceed $85 million of electric system revenue refunding bonds and the execution and delivery of a resolution, escrow agreement, bond purchase contract, a preliminary official statement, and a continuing disclosure certificate, all in substantially the forms presented at this meeting, with such additions thereto or changes therein as the officer executing the documents may require or approve. The board's approval of the bond purchase contract requires that the true interest cost on the bonds shall not exceed 6.5% per annum, and the underwriter's discount for the purchase of the bonds shall not exceed 0.6%. The approval by the board of the preliminary official statement relating to the bonds authorizes the general manager or the chief financial officer of the district to certify to the underwriter on behalf of the district that the preliminary official statement was deemed final as of its date within the meaning of Rule 15C212 promulgated under the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, except for the omission of certain pricing, rating, and related information as permitted by said rule. The board approval of the financing documents in substantially the forms presented is the same process followed by virtually all public agencies in California. Because rating information, actual interest rates, principal amounts by maturity, redemption provisions, and related matters are often not known until after the date of board approval or until the date of sale of the bonds, it is valid and legal for the board to approve the parameters of the bonds and the authorizing documents and to delegate the approval of the final terms and details to district staff. This also allows for correcting typographical errors, non-material edits, and correction of and update to information relating to the district and the electric system as necessary contained in the preliminary official statement. Once the bonds are sold, issued, and delivered to the purchasers, our office will provide the final execution version of the documents approved by the board, marked to show all changes made to such documents following approval by the board. Thank you very much for your patience.
Comments? Director Hanks?
Same old question. Do we have full disclosure?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's the anticipated date of the sale? Hopefully it's before August 2nd. No.
Yeah, we are pricing the bonds next Wednesday. That's the plan.
Okay, good.
Any other comments?
I'll move that we adopt the attached resolution that will authorize and approve a series of documents listed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Moving on to item number 17, page 210 on your agenda, financial update through May 31st, 2011. Mr. Broking?
If I could just jump back to 16 real quick. Just for the record, we have placed the draft documents on the back table for anyone who likes a copy, and the documents have also been placed on our website for anyone who wants to read them. So going on to item 17, just two items I'd like to highlight, both on the sales. Energy sales are down about 2% to budget so far year-to-date through May, and water sales are up about 3% year-to-date. And that's all I had for this month's report.
Do you have any, the board has any questions or comments, Mr. Broking?
I move that we acknowledge the receipt.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Please vote. That's the end of the business session. Mr. Kelly, is there any further business to discuss?
No, President Mendoza.
If not, then this meeting is adjourned.